Have you ever heard a story about a little mermaid who dreamed of walking on land? Or perhaps a tale about an ugly duckling who turned into a beautiful swan? Well, if you have, then you already know the magnificent work of a man named Hans Christian Andersen. He was not a king or a knight or even a famous explorer. He was a storyteller, but not just any storyteller. He was one of the most brilliant, most wonderful, most fantastically imaginative storytellers who ever lived. His tales have been read by millions and millions of children, and grown-ups too, all over the world, making him a true superstar of the story world. Now you might be thinking, what's so special about his fairy tales? That is a splendid question. Andersen's stories are not just about pretty princesses and handsome princes living happily ever after, although sometimes they do. His tales are full of real feelings, like being a bit lonely, or feeling like you don't quite fit in, or hoping for something better. He wrote about brave tin soldiers, talking nightingales, and even emperors who were a bit silly and wore no clothes. He had a special kind of magic in his words that could make you laugh one minute and feel a little bit sad the next, which is what makes his stories feel so incredibly real and important. Andersen came from a country called Denmark, which is a lovely place full of castles and colorful harbors. He was born a very, very long time ago, way back in 1805. That's over 200 years ago. Imagine that. Even though he lived in a time without televisions, video games, or the internet, his imagination was as big as the whole wide world. He created characters that feel like old friends and wrote adventures that can transport you to faraway lands just by turning a page. He showed everyone that the most powerful magic of all can be found inside a good book, waiting to be discovered by a curious reader just like you. So let's pull back the curtain and take a peek into the extraordinary life of this master of make-believe. We'll find out how a poor boy from a small town grew up to become a world-famous author, whose stories are still cherished today, on this very day, the 12th of June, 2025. His journey was a bit like one of his own fairy tales, full of tricky challenges, big dreams, and a little bit of magic along the way. Get ready to meet the man who taught the world that even an ugly duckling can have a happy ending. It's going to be a brilliant adventure. Hans Christian Andersen's life didn't start in a grand palace with servants waiting on him hand and foot. Oh no, not at all. He was born in a very small, slightly wonky house in a town called Odense. His father was a shoemaker, also known as a cobbler, who fixed people's worn-out shoes. His dad loved to read him stories, especially from a big book called 1001 Nights, filling young Hans's head with tales of genies and flying carpets. His mother worked as a washerwoman, washing clothes for richer families. They didn't have much money, but their little home was filled with love and stories, which is a rather wonderful sort of treasure to have. As a boy, Hans was a bit of a daydreamer. He was tall and gangly and perhaps a little bit clumsy, and he didn't always fit in with the other children. While they were running about and playing rough games, Hans would be busy creating his own fun. He had a fantastic toy theater that his father had made for him, and he would spend hours and hours putting on puppet shows. He made all the costumes for his puppets himself, and would sing and act out entire plays that he had made up in his fantastically busy brain. He was a one-boy entertainment spectacular. But life wasn't always a happy puppet show. When Hans was only 11 years old, his lovely father passed away, which was terribly sad. This meant his childhood was over, and he had to go and find work to help his mother. He tried a few jobs, but his head was always too full of stories and songs to be very good at them. He knew, deep down in his heart, that he was meant for something more. He dreamed of going to the big, bustling city of Copenhagen to become a famous actor or singer. He had a very big dream for a boy from such a small town. So, at the tender age of 14, with only a few coins in his pocket and a heart full of hope, he packed his little bundle of clothes and set off for the capital city. Can you imagine how brave that was? He was leaving everything he knew behind to chase a dream that seemed almost impossible. When he arrived, people thought he was a bit strange with his big ideas and his loud singing. He faced many rejections and had many doors slammed in his face, but he never ever gave up. He was determined to make his mark on the world one way or another. After trying his luck at acting and singing in Copenhagen and not having much success, young Hans discovered his true superpower. It wasn't on a stage, but on a page. He found that he could pour all his daydreams, all his feelings, and all his wonderful characters onto paper, using just a pen and some ink. At first he wrote poems and plays for grown-ups, and some kind people saw his talent and helped him go to school to become a better writer. It was here that he truly began to sharpen his skills, learning how to weave words together like a magnificent tapestry full of color and adventure. His big breakthrough came when he started writing down the fairy tales he had heard as a child, but with his own special twist. He also began inventing entirely new ones, straight from his brilliantly bonkers imagination. Soon everyone was talking about his stories. He wrote about the Little Mermaid, a beautiful sea creature who risks everything for love. He told the tale of the Ugly Duckling, a story that was very personal to him, about feeling different, but discovering you are wonderful just the way you are. These weren't just simple stories. They were full of heart and taught readers important lessons without ever being boring. Andersen wrote so many famous stories that it's hard to count them all. There's The Emperor's New Clothes, a fantastically funny tale about a silly emperor who is tricked into walking around with no clothes on, and only a child is brave enough to say it. Then there's The Snow Queen, a grand adventure with talking reindeer and a dangerous queen made of ice. And let's not forget the heartbreakingly beautiful story of the Little Match Girl, or the tale of the loyal and brave, steadfast tin soldier. Each story was a miniature world, perfectly crafted and utterly unforgettable. What made his writing so special was his amazing style. He wrote as if he were telling you the story himself, right there in the room with you. He would use simple words and chatty sentences, sometimes even interrupting the story to ask you a question. He wasn't afraid to write about sad things, which was very unusual for children's stories at the time. He knew that life isn't always happy endings, and his tales showed that it's okay to feel sad or lonely sometimes. This honesty made his characters feel real and his stories feel true, which is why people loved them so much. Why are we still talking about a man who was born over 2 centuries ago? It's because Hans Christian Andersen's stories have a timeless magic that never fades. They are like a secret key that unlocks feelings and ideas that are important to everyone, no matter where you live or when you were born. The idea of hoping for a better life, like the Little Mermaid, or the feeling of not belonging, like the Ugly Duckling, are things that people everywhere can understand. His tales are not just for children in Denmark, they are for children and adults all across the globe, from London to Tokyo to Sydney. His legacy is absolutely gigantic. You can see his influence everywhere. Think of all the films, cartoons, plays, and ballets that have been inspired by his work. The world's most famous movie-making companies have created blockbuster films based on his tales, turning them into spectacular animated musicals that are loved by millions. His stories have been translated into more than 125 languages. That means a child in almost any country can pick up a book and read about the brave tin soldier or the clever Thumbelina. He showed future storytellers that children's stories could be clever, funny, sad, and serious all at once. The magic of Andersen's tales also lies in the way they make us think. They are more than just entertainment. They are conversations. The Emperor's New Clothes teaches us about speaking the truth and not being afraid to say what we see, even if everyone else is pretending. The Little Match Girl reminds us to be kind and compassionate to those who have less than we do. Andersen tucked these big, important ideas inside his enchanting stories, giving us something to talk about and ponder long after we finished reading. He was a secret teacher, as well as a master storyteller. So, Hans Christian Andersen's influence will continue for many, many more years to come, as long as there are people who love a good story. He was a true original, a man who spun his own difficult childhood and his incredible imagination into tales that have become part of our world's culture. He gave us characters to cheer for, villains to boo at, and endings that make us feel a whole range of emotions. He proved that a boy from a poor family with a head full of dreams could indeed grow up to share his magic with the entire world, and for that, we will be forever grateful.